Welcome to the award-winning Performance Matters podcast from GP Strategies, the learning velocity company. In a world moving at the pace of AI, each episode brings you practical ideas and real experiences from industry experts to help your people learn with the speed, relevance, and quality that drive real performance. Welcome back to Performance Matters and episode 2 of our Learning Velocity sessions. Last time, GP Strategies CEO JF Vizina laid out the stakes. Today, we're going to get our hands a little dirty and talk about the how behind learning velocity. Now, as we get going, here's a little thought starter. If you're in learning and development, I've got a question that might hit close to home. If your business needs a new capability fast, do you have the systems to build it fast? Now, if you're unsure, you're in the right place. And I've got two fantastic professionals here to help us unpack it all. Matt Donovan, GP Strategies Chief Learning and Innovation Officer, AKA our lead innovation brain, and Ella Richardson, GP's Senior Director of Consulting, who helps organizations evolve their learning architecture from the inside out. Matt and Ella, welcome back to Performance Matters.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Well, we're honored to have you both. And now I know you both were key contributors to the 2026 Learning Velocity Guide, where you and the broader GP team outlined 7 challenges slowing organizations down and also how to accelerate through the age of AI. It's a great read. And for our listeners out there, if you haven't downloaded your copy, make sure you do so. Check the link in the description below or in all that kind of good stuff. It is a great piece here, and I want to unpack this with you both here. And one of the things I want to start us off with here is, Matt, you talk about building capabilities as fast as the business needs them. And Ella, you talk about organizations running on, I guess, 2 synchronized tracks. Okay, so we've got a couple ideas out here. I'm curious where those 2 ideas converge and meet up.
In my mind, these ideas meet up at performance, right? Because speed, like what Matt was talking about, isn't just about producing learning faster. It's about how we can shorten the distance between where the business is going, what kind of shift we're trying to create, and people actually behaving differently day to day. So when I was talking about the 2 tracks, it's like one of them really fixes today's issues and friction so that we can move work now. And the other is about rebuilding the system and the capability so that we're not continually firefighting the same kinds of problems every quarter in order to drive performance.
I love it. Now, Matt, is there anything, Matt, that you'd want to add to that we could magically intersperse in?
No, man, I think just kind of reframing why do we need to be so responsive? I mean, the simple fact is the world is increasingly disrupted, and it's the competitive environment, it's the technological environment, it's the very way in which we organize ourselves to compete as organizations. So all of those things are rapidly changing. In order to respond to that, you need to be able to move quickly to those disruptions. And that's really what learning velocity is being able to move at the speed of business. I think in the future, what we're going to start looking at is that, the concept or the separation between work and learning will get much smaller. Matter of fact, I see that actually work will be learning in the future, especially in the age of AI. So as humans actually become the wisdom providers in that space, being able to continuously grow your wisdom, but also contribute it to the space, you're going to have to continually move quickly with the challenges you're facing, as well as the advent of the technology supporting you.
Yeah. Now you're talking about something that I think is, I think you could encapsulate it in the word strategic. And one of the things that really surprised me was that in the Learning Velocity Guide, it's noted that approximately only 19% of L&D teams are seen as strategic partners within the business. Does that surprise either of you?
I think it's a decrease, actually, if you look over time. So is it a surprise? I think it's a surprise in the note of the change. I think prior data showed it was about 50% believed that they were part of the strategic, and it's dropped to 20%. And I think part of that comes with, a lot of organizations, especially when you talk about the age of AI, when not knowing exactly what they're going to do. What does the future mean for AI? How do we actually get the ROI on that? So as the business figures that out, how's the L&D tying into that? So as you can start to see, as the different parts are struggling with this, how one group may feel less connected than they have been in the past. Because as a group is starting to figure it out, how do you incorporate them to kind of help you in that process? So, but I do think it's alarming in the sense that L&D professionals aren't there, because I think they do have a critical role in enabling the humans to make the shift. This is not just about adopting a technology. And I do talk about AI, but it's probably the biggest thing that we're seeing disruption wise out there. But more importantly, is if you can help the humans move faster to the evolution, to the future state of how you're integrating that human plus AI, the better competitively advantaged the organization will be. So while yes, it does surprise me a little bit, I'm not completely surprised, given that all the turmoil and disruption that we are facing, that they're feeling disconnected and less a part of the strategic overall.
Yeah. It's interesting what you say about that, how that number might have changed, because the number itself doesn't really surprise me, but I do think it's quite worrying, because if you think about trying to achieve speed without like the systems and architecture around it, like ultimately all we achieve is churn. And I think a lot of learning teams are structurally positioned to respond to the business rather than design capability for the business. And I think certainly from like the kinds of organizations that we work with, like often, not everyone, but like, often learning teams are invited in after a decision's been made and then delivered, like measured on things like delivery volume. And you just can't be strategic if you're downstream of the strategy by design. It requires like proximity to the business in order to get like the decision impact. So, I think what does surprise me really about it is how many leaders still expect L&D to be strategic, but without really changing how L&D is being engaged. Once a team gets kind of labeled as an order taker, I think it's quite hard to shake that. And organizations can kind of tend to keep pulling them back into delivery mode. So we really need to get, I think a lot of organizations need to get smarter around how they're challenging L&D on what we're delivering, which is not just how much learning, but really how is it impacting the business outcomes.
Yeah, and that brings me to one of the points of insight in the guide, and that was one of the elements Matt talked about, is pushing us away from episodic programs towards more modular embedded learning. So that was something I really took away from that. I'm curious, Matt, what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, I mean, I think from a design standpoint is being able to create content that can actually be restructured under a variety of contexts. And one of the most common contexts is based off of, what do I need to learn, when I need to learn it, at what moment, for what outcome. So and I use the 5 moments of need as a base of a need structure that would go out to it. Is the difference is when something goes wrong or something changes versus the moment I'm trying to apply that. So you can take a content or a piece of topic related assets and structure them so that although they may be consistent across those moments, you're wrapping a layer of context that makes more sense, or removing context. So if you're learning something for the first time, you need more context. But if you're trying to figure out what went wrong, what changed, I don't need all the context. I need to get an answer on how to fix this, or what other practitioners are being able to do. So the idea is that allows, that modularity allows you to be able to quickly generate a range of solutions to meet a range of needs at scale, to be able to do that. So rather than like one giant piece of prescribed training that we're going out there, we're putting something out there that can be reused in the moment of need and wrapped with the right
Mm.
context.
Yeah, I see that as that shift from you're building a course to more building capability moments, solving real challenges in that flow of work there. And, Matt, for folks that are familiar with your AI maturity model, which is something that is discussed within the guide, where would this modular approach show up within that continuum?
Well, in the AI maturity model, we talk about how they're overall attacking the adoption of AI. So, from a more structured standpoint, I think that moving towards a way to be able to support that AI maturity model, this would be further down as you get deeper into knowing what you need to be able to take. But it's going to anchor back to the work. The key is it has to get back to the work ultimately to make it matter. That's the biggest element of context. So in that maturity model, just keep in mind there's a couple of things around how we're structuring ourselves and some elements within that, not just the creation of the modular component, but it's anchoring it back to the work as well.
Yeah, and speaking of different elements here, I know in the guide, the idea of atomic instructional design gets a pretty big spotlight. So, for someone hearing that phrase for the first time, how would you explain it?
Well, I think again, if you think of a element of table of elements, so you have a whole different types of elements that are out there, and I know you use the term briefly with it, but the idea is that these elements are then combined into molecules of relevance. So the same thing would be being able to take small pieces of contextualized topical information, combining in a way that makes it relevant to the answer based off what they're trying to solve, who they're working with, what they're trying to achieve with that. But the idea is trying to create, instead of a very large piece, you're trying to create something that can be combined and recombined into meaningful units.
Yeah, and to me that's really cool is thinking of the idea of almost like I don't know, Lego bricks put together and they can shape shift in different ways. Now, Ella, you see this every day, okay? When organizations feel behind, what surface level solutions do they reach for?
Well, I'd say that I guess the surface level solutions is just visible activity. So sometimes this manifests as a new program, a platform, some content, a an AI pilot. It's the like, just build something reflex. Because I think often we feel like just doing something, the sense of motion feels reassuring, especially when teams are under pressure. I think the issue with that is that that kind of impulse or response treats like the symptoms, but not necessarily the blockers to velocity underneath. And it can be a little bit of a sticking plaster, a band aid rather than really like getting to the core of what we're trying to achieve. I often sometimes talk to clients about going slow to go fast, that
Mm.
take the moment to really look at what is it that we're trying to change and then making sure that the what we are doing is really intentional rather than just something to be seen to be doing something.
Yeah, I love that. And on that note, the whole idea of AI personalization, I mean, it's everywhere. So, from your perspective, Ella, where is it truly delivering, and where has it been, I guess, overhyped?
I think it really works when it's helping us make better decisions faster. Um, like Matt spoke about earlier, it's the reducing the amount of time from support or intervention to performance. So if people don't need to go and search when they're in a moment of need, we can drive performance that much quicker. But I think where it's overhyped really is when it just means recommendations and pathways, and it's not necessarily connected to the drivers of performance or what people really need to do. Um, and a lot of that, I think, comes from an understanding of and having good data about people, um, and being able to then construct and serve up what they need in the moment of work.
Yeah, I like that. What I'm hearing is it's not magic. You have to have good intentions, but also some decent infrastructure in there in place here. So now I want to double back on something, Ella. If you can hear me, I know we're having some internet glitches here, so stop me if you can't hear this. But one of the things that I heard from you is this idea of becoming a strategic partner with the business. And uh, one of the things I wanted to ask you is why is listening to the business before building so hard?
Yeah. And I think it's because it's a perception, right? Because I think listening can feel slower and more uncertain. And yet we're in this kind of environment which rewards speed and certainty, and building can feel like really decisive and positive. Um, but most L&D systems are designed to respond rather than diagnose. And when an organization feels behind, I think what feels slow feels really risky. Um, and listening, when we're listening to the business and we listen to the organization, it means we need to sit with the ambiguity,
Hmm.
ask harder questions, and sometimes that can feel like we're pushing back. So all of this, do you see what I mean? It's the net effect feels like it's harder and slower. But the reality is that skipping the listening is how organizations ultimately have to end up doing more work and moving slower. Which when pressure is high, that feels unpalatable. But it has to be done if we want to do things well and efficiently.
Ella touched on this earlier, the idea that the learning velocity guide says learning teams need to run on two tracks. Operational excellence today, transformation for tomorrow. Where do organizations struggle with this reality?
Balancing both of those things. I mean, just to be honest, it's that's where they struggle. The challenge. So this is, I think, some of the execution innovation tension and innovation tying to transformation. And one of the things is that execution is the, high performance, consistent, repeatable performance. That's really what execution is. And we're doing what we do today, trying to continuously deliver great within that. That's what we're doing. And there's a natural preservation and attention in the organization to reinforce that. That's what we want out of our folks, our performers, our workers, etc. The innovation side says do something different, something new, something of value, something that's going to have an impact, and generally in response to some type of a disruption out there. We innovate to do that. So between the execution reinforcements that we have and then becoming and doing something that's going to be, new and different and have value, that's a normal tension in most of the organizations. And it's really hard to kind of enable that transformation while you're actually doing the other thing. I mean, that's the old adage everybody talks about, is like you're building the plane while you're flying it, which is not a really good idea. We use that to say that's almost an excuse for what we're doing, but that's not a really good thing to do. Yet we find that a humorous quote. But that's really what we able. So I think the point is that the organizations and the individuals have to come back with intentionality, the intentionality to understand the balance of both. You still need to perform in the current conditions, but you also still need to be able to create new muscle memory, new practices, new activities that are going to help you get to that new future state of execution within that. So that balance is a normal tension for any organization in any practice that it does, not just what L&D does, but actually everything that we do. And AI, we kind of come back to this again around AI is a significant shift in that. So you're trying to do things the way you did them yesterday while also learning how to do them differently with a new tool, new tool sets, new agentic team members. A lot of that is happening at the same time. And when you try and do them all at once, it's really challenging with it. So you have to go back to, again, what I call that intentionality. You have to create the psychological safety for people to be able to grow and to be able to embrace new things. You have to understand the concept of the productivity gap. When I change from behavior A to behavior B and I'm trying to get better at behavior B, there's probably going to be less of a performance level with B compared to A because I've been doing A for quite a long time. So I think these are some of the longer tensions and how do we help organizations think through that. It's going back to the, creating space for the change management, creating space for the humans to become the things we need them to be, a deeper understanding of what the work in the future state's going to be, re-envisioning, taking effort to not just layer AI over, but actually have intentionality on how you're actually going to integrate it so that we have a vision for where it needs to go. These are a lot of the things that we're facing. So we unpacked several things in there. So is a simple question you asked with a very complex answer as to why is
Absolutely.
this so hard?
Ve- very, very complex. And let me try to put a finer point on this, and I'll open this up for both of you. Of all the challenges, which one do learning leaders underestimate most?
How much they're going to have to change.
What do you think, Ella?
Um, I think there's something that touches a lot of the challenges that we've described that in driving learning velocity, but I think that leaders underestimate is like judgment. It's knowing what not to do as well as what to do, because I think the velocity all breaks down when everything feels really urgent and everything's a priority. So for me, it's like the great leadership isn't about just producing more. It's about choosing better and having the right architecture and the right authority to be able to be deliberate and clear on what we're not doing as well as what we are.
Matt, Ella, hey, this was a lot of fun. I know we had some internet glitches in the middle of recording this, and for those that are on the line, you don't even have an idea how many internet glitches we had on this thing. But I want to say it was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for bringing the how behind learning velocity to life. I appreciate both of you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here and enjoy, obviously, the ongoing conversations.
All right, episode 3 is coming up next with Nick Gervin and Dr. Cheryl Jackson, where we get into the human side of this: leadership, fear, safety, resilience, all the fun stuff. If you haven't downloaded the guide yet, I implore you to do it. Everything we discussed today has richer detail in there. Thanks for listening to the award-winning Performance Matters podcast, brought to you by GP Strategies, the Learning Velocity Company. For 60 years, we've helped organizations build capability with the speed, relevance, and quality that make real performance possible. You can subscribe to the show anywhere you get podcasts or listen on our website at gpstrategies.com.